We'll be talking about the Ottawa Sun editorial entitled Gillette, Morally Superior to the Rest of Us. I'm Jocelyn Markle.
I'm Mary McPherson.
I'm Shannon McClellan.
And I'm Javier Toledo.
The article was written in response to Gillette's video advertisement, We Believe, the Best a Man Can Be. The article goes on to outline the author's views about the subject of the advertisement, the brand itself, and the implications that the ad has for society. In an era where the media has been dominated by the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, the Women's March, and the continued fight for women's rights, it is no surprise that prominent companies are starting to step up and try to effect social change. On January 14, 2019, Gillette released a video advertisement that touched on behaviors such as bullying, homophobia, sexual assault, the Me Too movement, mansplaining, and catcalling that are an unfortunate part of daily life for a lot of people. It highlights the needs for men to step up, say something, and hold other men accountable for their actions, as well as pointing out that the negative stereotypes and behaviors are learned and that men need to set a better example for the men of tomorrow. Gillette acknowledged that as a trusted global company that has a large male customer base, they have the ability, and therefore they have the responsibility, to bring attention to the issue of toxic masculinity and address the broader societal issues that plague our current society. The advertisement was met with both widespread support and harsh criticism. The criticism the ad received highlights the exact reason that an advertisement like this is needed in the first place. There has been such a significant change in the definition of masculinity, and a lot of people seem to be stuck somewhere between the negative definition of what masculinity used to be and what it has now become. Gillette has attempted to try and start to bridge that gap for its customer base by opening up the conversation and redefining the standard of what being a man really means.
Functionalism is an approach in sociology that maintains the view that human societies are composed of interrelated parts, each one serving a function that will help maintain equilibrium as a whole. Reference 1. According to functionalists, men and women perform distinct and complementary roles to maintain cohesiveness within families and wider society. Reference 1. Hegemonic masculinity is a concept originally created by R.W. Connell in 1987. Reference 2. It is used as a way to measure men's qualities that cause gender inequality. The traits associated to hegemonic masculinity are aggressiveness, control, strength, drive, and ambition. Reference 3. Only when these traits are exaggerated and overly present does hegemonic masculinity turn into toxic masculinity. Functionalism implies that these characteristics make men better suited towards certain fields of work. In Gunter's editorial, he claims that not all men possess violent, aggressive, and abusive traits, even in the slightest. Reference 4. During his article, it is evident that he believes only a small population of men possess these characteristics at all. When Gunter denies the fact that men have these tendencies, he denies the idea of hegemonic masculinity. Gunter is going against functionalism when he denies the majority of men possess these traits, because if they did not, they would not be differentiated from women in the labor force. Some other functionalists might agree with parts of Gunter's paper. One instance would be when he says that Gillette should stick to selling razors and stay away from topics such as toxic masculinity. Reference 4. When he says this, he is implying that their main function is simply to sell razors. Therefore, when they make ads tackling much more than that, they are no longer serving their sole and fundamental function. This is consistent with the functionalist theory, as it states that people and organizations exist to accomplish certain functions and keep the community at an equilibrium. Reference 3. When Gillette takes on a heavy topic such as toxic masculinity, they are straying away from their core function and causing an imbalance in the equilibrium of society's components.
Conflict theory, and furthermore, feminist theory and Marxist theories focus on the power imbalances in society. Conflict theory can be seen as a direct commentary on functionalists, as it masks the power imbalances between men and women. Through the development of conflict theory, men and masculinity as an object of research has taken off. As mentioned before, male and female gender roles assigned by functionalists and the division of labor are split into instrumental and expressive. This, however, has far from a neutral impact on women. Reference 1. Conflict theory also explores ideas such as patriarchy and hegemonic masculinity. Patriarchy is a system or society in which the father or eldest male is the head of the family and the descent is traced through the male line. These systems are societies in which men hold the power, women are largely excluded from it. Reference 2. Marxist theory stemmed from class struggle, class being an economic status, and the wealth disparity between rich and poor or bourgeoisie and proletarian. Marxist theory largely ignores race, gender, or ethnic inequalities as it only creates further division between the classes. Reference 3. Feminist theory, on the other hand, vary in all manner, but emphasize in which the way women are subordinated in society. Some feminist theory also address the gender inequalities faced by men. Reference 4. Gunter's article most closely relates to conflict theory. For example, when Gunter says, most men aren't bad, most men aren't violent or abusive, just as most whites or non-indigenous people aren't racist or colonizers. This is the backbone of Gunter's argument, thus acknowledging a problem, however, discrediting any type of conflict theory.
Symbolic interactionism's main concept towards gender suggests that masculinity and femininity and their roles and norms are negotiable within society. Reference 1. Unlike functionalism and conflict theory, which focuses on the individual to society, symbolic interactionism focuses on the impact that society has on individuals. Reference 1. More specifically, symbolic interactionism argues that children learn gender behavior through a variety of processes such as imitating others. Reference 1. Gunter, reference 2, goes against this aspect of the theory by saying the ad use blame and shame. They seek to get their target audience to change their actions by blaming them for the problem or problems and shaming them into amending their ways. Gillette does not blame men for this issue, but rather developed this ad to try to promote others how to properly treat women by going to the source and correcting the wrong behavior. The roles that we take in society implement how gender protrudes to others. Reference 3. Therefore, when we act in such manners toward others, it paints a picture that these actions are okay. Gunter, reference 2, agrees with symbolic interactionism by stating, I'm not in favor of bullying, sexual harassment, or domestic violence. However, it is not enough to just take that role by saying it, but to act upon those words. According to Cooley's looking-glass self theory, an individual perceives themselves based on how society views them. Reference 3. Gunter, reference 2, explains, most men aren't bad, most men aren't violent or abusive, which goes alongside this theory. Most men aren't what Gillette's advertisement portrays them to be, but there is a large number that is. Therefore, this is the reason why the advertisements like this are created. Altogether, parts of Gunter, reference 2, editorial agrees with some of the same views towards gender that symbolic interactionism has. However, it does not help solidify his argument.
This editorial does a poor job of convincing its readers that Gillette was misguided and unfair when they released their The Best a Man Can Get advertisement. Not only is it extremely biased, but Gunter also employed numerous logical fallacies in an attempt to get his point across, mainly strawman, red herring, appeal to pity, and emotionally loaded terms. The strawman fallacy occurs when someone attacks a position the opponent doesn't really hold. Reference 1. Gunter seems to have missed the point that Gillette was trying to make, which isn't that all men are bad or that all men partake in violent or abusive behavior, but rather the fact that men have a responsibility to stand up and speak out when they see unacceptable behavior instead of brushing it off as typical male behavior or using the excuse boys will be boys. The red herring fallacy is a distraction from the argument, typically with some sentiment that seems to be relevant but isn't really on topic. Reference 1. Gunter spends the middle portion of the editorial talking about the Gillette brand reputation and how this ad may be a threat to its market position. While this may be true and is technically related to the topic of the advertisement, it temporarily distracts the reader from the actual argument and opinion that Gunter was originally trying to make. The third logical fallacy that Gunter uses is appeal to pity, which appeals to the compassion and emotional sensitivity of others when these factors are not strictly relevant to the argument. Reference 1. Gunter spends the entire editorial complaining about how Gillette made hasty generalizations about the entire male gender. As stated before, he's missed the point of the ad, so he spends the editorial complaining about how not all men are bad, violent, or abusive, and how it is unacceptable and wrong that a trusted global company like Gillette has lumped all men together in their definition of toxic masculinity. Gunter makes use of the fallacy of emotionally loaded terms several times in an attempt to strengthen his argument. The fallacy of emotionally loaded terms is using words with positive or negative connotations to sway readers. Reference 2. He uses these emotionally loaded terms to describe his distaste and dissatisfaction with the advertisement and the message that it sends. Words like sanctimonious marketing executives, corporate social justice warriors, hellfire pulpit, and repent you sinners, reference 3, are examples of emotionally loaded terms that Gunter uses throughout the editorial in an attempt to inspire emotion, gain support, and sway opinions instead of using logic and evidence. In addition to the numerous fallacies employed in an attempt to strengthen his argument, Gunter also employs biased tone, language, and evidence towards men throughout the editorial. He writes with the opinion that men can do no wrong, excluding those few men who are in favor of bullying, sexual harassment, or domestic violence. While he is correct in saying that not all men are abusive or violent, that does not mean that those who aren't violent do no wrong. While most men may not be abusive or violent, there are a lot of men who also do not speak up or intervene when they see something happening that's not right. Gunter takes the notion, made by Gillette, that men need to step up and do better as a personal attack and basically jumps down the advertisement's throat to say how it is wrong, unfair, and preachy. Instead of taking the time to fully understand what message the ad is trying to convey and critically examining his own behavior to see if maybe he is guilty of allowing these behaviors to go on unchecked, he completely shoots down the idea and doesn't even allow the thought that perhaps the ad is right. Nobody likes being told that they are wrong or that they did something that wasn't right, but nobody is perfect and everyone has room for improvement. The fact that Gunter doesn't even consider this notion supports the statement that this editorial is biased towards men.